Kasi tayo, ang nakita kasi namin talaga, we have really good talent here. The problem is, go outside, ganun, katulad din naman conventional sports eh. We have really good talents here. They go outside because they get better support outside. So kami, syempre, why would we not focus on that opportunity? Why not provide all that support for our esports athletes here so that they stay here?
Hey everyone, it's the Game High podcast with another episode. So this is Chip and Carlo back at it. Well, we're doing things a bit differently here. Chip is not with us tonight. He had to go attend to some personal things, but nevertheless, I still have someone, a good friend of ours and a fellow podcaster from Property King. Please welcome my co-host for tonight, Ramon King, or otherwise known as RK. Pare, welcome.
Thank you, Carlo. No, I'm very happy to be here, subbing for our good friendship. Like what you mentioned, fortunately, he can't be with us tonight, but I'm very honored to be invited, as a sub for the Superman, the Superman.
Wow, talaga
Chip.
Never pa nabanggit yun sa podcast na yan, pero good job for mentioning it. Thanks RK. Very happy that you're here assisting with me, because what we have tonight is a very exciting episode. We do have another special guest. For the past few episodes of our Game High podcast, we have been jam-packed with a lot of special guests, and tonight is no different, right? He is currently the COO of one of the biggest esports team in the country. And so we would like to welcome to the show Jab Escutin. Sir, magandang gabi sa'yo. How are you?
Hi, good evening. Thank you for having me. Yeah,
Cool.
Really excited to discuss about the industry.
Correct. Yeah, so that's one of the reasons why we are very excited to have you on the show, because first of all, we'd like to get an insight into if someone directly involved in managing one of the biggest esports teams in the Philippines. But before we get started, we have our segment in the Game High podcast, which is called the High Five, wherein we share our positivity with what happened to us either the week or the last week, or anything that's recent that happened to you. So being our special guest, Jab, we'd like to give you the honors of sharing your high five.
Yeah, first off, we just, one of the positive things that happened to me for last week, specifically for business and maybe something personal. We just closed out another esports brand that wants, to get into esports, which is very good for our industry. So I can't, just give out details right now, but it's more of a conventional sports brand that asks for our help to establish their esports team. So it's very good for the industry in my view, because we've been getting a lot of interest in terms of, let's say, conventional sports teams that want to get into the esports industry. So that's one of the best things that ever happened to me last week. For business, but for personal, I just spent the entire day outside with my 2-year-old daughter.
Oh, cool.
It's the longest time she's been out for the past couple of years. So because of the pandemic, so it's just very. I'm just very happy to see her face light up when she sees a lot of other people around. Just playing in the grass and all that stuff. So it's very, very positive for me. So thank you for asking. This is a good segment. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's something really positive. I mean, with things kind of I would say really leveling, right? Not really getting better, pero medyo nagle-level out na siya. It's good to see that there are instances, at least personally for you, may time ka to spend with your daughter, and that's really good. Very, very positive, and high five yan, RK,
Yes.
High five yan. Let's high five to that. All right. Cool. Let's get into it. So, Jam, first of all, how are you? I know that you've already shared your situation or something very positive with your daughter and with your family. But how are you dealing with the current situation right now? How has been your, life so far?
Well, To be honest, there's just in terms of, let's say, the esports industry, with my personal life and my job as just operating the biggest esports team in the Philippines. I'm very lucky because esports is more of a flexible type of industry in terms of, let's say, dealing with the pandemic and all of that stuff. So I would say we are more resilient in terms of, let's say, the restrictions that's being put in by the government. So as you know, esports is basically competitive video gaming that can be played online. So we don't necessarily have to be together. We didn't have to stop operations or anything like that. The only thing that changed for us is mostly just making sure our athletes are actually safe. And our events are not really more of face-to-face, because the high-end level competitions are usually face-to-face, because we'd like to gather around, all the enthusiasts would be together just to watch the high-level games and enjoy it together. Right now we can do that, but we can do it online, and we're kind of used to it because esports is mainly online, so we're very lucky to be resilient in that way, at least compared to the other industries. So,
Correct.
Yeah, everything is good.
Correct. Okay. But how has that changed, Jab, when it comes to, kasi diba you mentioned events, you mentioned the resiliency with your teams, right? So yung like previous na setup nyo before, you guys were like performing in like local events, right? And now that it has been majority online, like streaming or other channels, what was the biggest adjustment?
Well, I wouldn't say there's. Usually, I explain it in a way that, let's say, compare it to conventional sports. So, conventional sports is basically non-existent right now during the quarantines, right? Let's say, sports like basketball, they had to stop operations because it's basically contact sport. So you can't really have social distancing or anything like that, or at least in a more practical manner. Because if they really wanted to do that, they would have to be in a bubble that costs a lot of money. Testing itself is very, very expensive, right?
Right.
So I would say it's not like we were not affected. It's more like we didn't have the pluses. Let's say we didn't have to stop our events like other sports. It's more like we just adjusted to the normal ways that we had to do it, because we play games online every day. The only difference is right now with the pandemic, we didn't have on-site or on-ground events. That's the only thing that is different right now.
Okay.
So in terms of adjustment, there's not really much of adjustment. It's just that we had to get used to the fact that we wouldn't have on-ground events that we used to have, especially for the big ones, for the big events. Because usually with the high level events, or let's say like a really big tournament, I don't know if you're familiar with the MPL or the pro leagues.
Yep.
Yes.
Usually the grand finals or the playoffs or the last 2 days would usually be on ground, because that's what brings people together. They want to watch the high level games on site. They want to watch it live. So I think in terms of, let's say, adjustment, I think that's what we were adjusting to. We are trying to get used to the fact that we had to watch games either separately, because I had to watch at home. I didn't have anybody to high five right beside me when a really good play came in, all that stuff.
Yep.
Sometimes one of the adjustments we made was, we had watch parties. Sometimes we had that. We had to have all of our fans together, or sometimes me and my friends, we go together, watch the games together on Zoom, sometimes on Discord. So just so that we can, be happy together when we see something really good or a play that's really good. So I think that's the only adjustment for us. So I think we're still really lucky in terms of that, because we didn't have to stop. Like compared to all the other industries and other sports events, everybody had to stop. We just had to get used to being online. That's it for us.
Yeah.
We're very
Absolutely.
lucky to be that way.
Okay, yeah. Well, siguro naman naiintindihan ko yung feeling na yun. Kasi 'di ba, it's like any other sport event eh. You have to it's really a team sport. It demands audience participation. It's much better pag na-enjoy nyo together. So yeah, I mean that's what has the situation has brought about to us.
So Jab, I have a question. This is before your career in esports. So correct me if I'm wrong, but you were in the hotel industry before streaming full time, right? How did you make that transition?
Well, esports was more of a passion project for me when I was beginning. I was a really competitive gamer. When I was a really young kid, I used to go to the arcades and play with my friends. And then, growing up with a 9 to 5 job and all that stuff, I continued being with my friends. Building a community around it. I was actually the first one to actually organize, on-ground events in terms of, let's say, streaming for esports. So I had my community of friends in, let's say, Street Fighter and Tekken. I would gather everybody and just put up a tripod and then record everybody because, at the end of the day, to be honest, I was a really competitive player, and then it came to a point I realized that I'm not really that good. I can't be the best players in my community. Yeah, it would come to a point that you would realize that. And then I started to think, okay, I can't compete with these guys. What else do we need in the community so that we can continue to grow?
Right.
So I realized that nobody was doing anything in the back end. Nobody was, my biggest frustration when esports was growing as an industry. In the beginning, nobody really knew how the games went. Right. Remember, I don't know how old you guys are, but I would be really, really frustrated when I hear about, a tournament from another city, and then I ask who won. They would just tell me, "Oh, this guy won. How did he win?" And then nobody knew how. Because nobody was recording the games, nobody was able to watch it, and all that stuff. So I started thinking, maybe I can do that for my community so we can continue to grow. Maybe I can put up videos on YouTube, just the cheap setup, and then everything ramped up from there. When I did that, I only had, let's say, a tripod and then a digicam right in front of the arcades where the players were sitting. And then I was recording it and putting up overlays, just graphics over that, and then putting it up on YouTube. And then, I saw that the community, responded to it. They really like watching their own games. People were interested how the combos were done or who's really, really good. Kasi diba usually nangyari dyan, sino mas magaling? This guy mas magaling kaysa dito. How do we know? We didn't even see the games, It might have been a one-sided match for all we know, right? Pero, I started doing that. And then eventually, I upgraded my equipment. I started just investing in it. I got all the equipment when it was really, really expensive and risky at that time because it was really my passion project. Luckily, it just ramped up from there, and then here I am. I had sleepless night. I was really known in the office as the guy that would be really busy around October because one of the biggest esports conventions in the Philippines happens around October and somewhere around April for the summer. It's either I would go on leave during that weekend or I would come into work just really, really tired and having no sleep because I was really passionate about creating events for the community.
Right.
Just making sure that we continue. At least I'm very lucky because I can say that all that hard work actually paid off. And, when I had a chance to actually transition into, creating a company out of purely out of esports and managing an esports team, it was a big risk at that time, but, everything paid off. I had to, choose between taking a risk or staying with whatever I had and just, I didn't feel like I was, maximizing all of the potential. If I would go to my regular hotel job and then doing some of the stuff in esports on the back line, I realized that I had to do this. I had to go full time, or else I'd probably kick myself in the back one of these days for not doing it, or else somebody else will do it, right?
Okay.
Not me. So
Yeah,
I had to
for sure.
take a chance. here I am.
Can I just backtrack a bit, Jab? Kasi you mentioned yung mga games na you weren't good enough. Maybe pare-pareho tayo dyan. Kasi hindi naman tayo nandun sa... I mean, both of us, RK and myself. RK can relate to it probably kasi he has a team that competes and he himself can compete. Ako personally, I can't do well on competitive online play right now. More of a casual gamer lang ako. Pero ano yung mga games na nilalaro mo nun? Na nabanggit mo before?
I started with Street Fighter. I'm a purely Street Fighter kind of player because that was the very first, I would say, esports type of game.
For sure.
Because you know, when we were growing up, it's Mario Brothers, Pac-Man. People were competing against high scores.
Correct.
When Street Fighter came in, it's basically the first time you held the controller and matched up against a person right beside you, right? Because you didn't have online there. Yeah, so it was basically the first time you would go a head-to-head match with a person right there beside you. You didn't have to compete with the computer for the high score against somebody else. So, you know, that didn't really try Tekken, maybe Street Fighter, and then I moved on to mobile games, probably, Clash Royale, stuff like that.
Oh, okay.
What trivia is, I don't really play Mobile Legends. I haven't played one game of that.
Really?
But I enjoy watching the games.
Okay.
I don't play Mobile Legends. I just know the characters. I know how to watch the games because you know my team is competing in that, but I haven't played a single game of that.
Okay. Well, interesting to know.
I have a follow-up question about your transition to doing esports full time. So it's very inspiring, your story. You started from the grassroots, diba? But how did your involvement with Bren Esports actually begin? And as a COO for Bren, what do you actually do for your team?
Well, I transitioned because I was one of the founders for Bren Esports. So our main investor, Bernard Chong, actually our CEO. So one day we got together because we were, we played together. We played Clash Royale together. So I saw that he had a passion for the game, and then one day we talked to each other, and then he said that he wanted to, establish an esports team, and he asked if I could help. So that was the biggest decision of my life because that's something that really demanded a lot of time for me, and then I figured I can't do this properly if I don't go to it full time, so I had to leave my job that way. But that's how I got into it. So I'm the co-founder of Bren Esports. So basically what I do as the chief operating officer is that I do all of the operations, so anything that basically it's everything. So one of the things that people don't know about Bren Esports is that it's actually owned by a company called Bren Pro Inc. So basically, it's part of an umbrella. So Bren Pro Inc. is our company that when we started. It's actually I would say an esports ecosystem, more of a company.
Yep.
So Bren Esports is the biggest front-facing product that we have under our umbrella. But outside of that, we also have an events team that handles small to medium grassroots events for tournaments. We also have a lifestyle channel because esports and lifestyle is actually crossing with each other right now, right? Because these are basically celebrities that influence their fans on what to wear or what to buy and all that stuff.
May ganun na pala. All right. Okay.
Yeah. So basically, these pro players that you see right now in esports are basically celebrities. When people ask me, let's say when I have visitors to the HQ, which are not really familiar with what esports is, sometimes we have old guys, just businessmen, just visiting the HQ or the training facility. They would ask me what esports is all about. I would tell them, just think about what sport you really, really like. Usually the answer is NBA.
Yep.
I would tell them it's exactly like NBA. So us as a company, we basically own, let's say, the Lakers, right? And then NBA is the actual organizer of the event. So how does the NBA or how does esports make money? It's exactly like NBA. Revenues are created because of sponsorships, endorsements, content creation, all that stuff. It's exactly the same industry on how we create revenue. So it's easy for us to do that in terms of, let's say, explaining to people that are non-endemic to esports, so they have a better understanding. It's just that, I always tell them, don't think about the video game. Don't think about all that stuff that you don't understand. It's basically a platform where people compete, much like basketball, right? So when they think about it that way, they have a better understanding of what esports is, because it's exactly the same.
Yeah, exactly. Right? I mean, it's like owning a franchise, like owning a team. Pareho lang naman yung parang dynamics yan. It's just that the platform is different, right? The actual parang mismong ginagawa nyo. You're playing games, right? And that's it's an industry that has, I mean, I'm not sure if people know this then, kasi I have watched a few documentaries na esports has been present late 90s pa lang eh. Like what Jab mentioned, right? What you mentioned, Jab. Street Fighter tournaments in the US, Nintendo-based tournaments na may mga ganong klaseng games were actually being, had like a small following to it. And then eventually when the online phase came, talagang sumabog na lang eh. Yun parang yung term na pwede natin magamit. The industry just exploded and, developed to this kind of a bigger, wider audience. It's just like your typical basketball, football, whatever sport that is, esports is there. Pero so let's shift a bit, Jab, and ask about, because you touched point on this a few minutes ago regarding the pandemic and how the situation has changed for your team. Pero we're curious to know in terms of, let's say, training, right? Like any other sport team, people are being trained in the specific games that they play. How does that? How did the situation affect your team's training, your player morale? So let's start off with that.
Well, in terms of that, it's one of the pandemic is one of the things that we're I would say that we're lucky again in terms of that, because in terms of, let's say, esports and player training and all that stuff, to give you a good sense. There are called boot camps. So the normal way an esports team would actually train is that they would live together, and then they're basically already in a bubble. Esports athletes are already in a bubble when bubbles were a thing. So when the pandemic came, when all the quarantine restrictions were in place, we sometimes we would joke around if nobody told our esports athletes that there was actually a quarantine in place, they wouldn't know about it, because they would live their lives.
Okay.
They were in a quarantine. They would not leave the boot camp. They would not leave wherever they train, because it's a house. Nobody actually goes out. They just play all day and train all day. So if nobody told them that it was ECQ, they would probably not even know that there was a quarantine. So that's how we are lucky in a sense, because all that training and all that stuff that we normal people would actually do to adjust has already been the athletes have already been doing for a long time. So we barely needed any kind of adjustment because of that.
Pero how does the training look like? Just give us an insight here, Jab. Pag kunyari the players are already living together, how does training go?
Well, as I said, it's kind of like if you imagine how professional athletes train. So let's say there's a really big difference in terms of, let's say, how do I put this? Let's say basketball in terms of, let's say, paliga ni kapitan. Right? These guys would say they are training and practicing, right? So nagbabasketball sila sa hapon, whatever they do, naglalaro sila, right? Okay, so that's training for them. When we say the NBA, you know that this is very, very stringent training with schedules and different regiments, scrimmages and planning and strategy building, positioning and all that stuff. It's the same with esports.
Wow.
So
amazing.
Training would usually, if you really want to win the highest levels at a consistent pace, because you might, let's say you're an amateur team, like let's say paligan ni Kapitan, you would win, right?
Yep.
But if you want to compete at the highest levels, in the pro levels, you have to be organized. You can't win just by practicing whatever you want to do. It's not like that. You will not win. You will probably drop off in the next tournament if you come up against the teams that are organized.
Right.
So for us, with our team, we are very lucky that we have the only proper esports training facility in the Philippines. So when I say proper esports training facility, when we say kasi gaming house or the boot camp, it's usually a house.
Yeah.
Yep.
When you go there, it's a house, right?
Yes.
It's a house that they converted with rooms where the players train. So basically, where you eat, where you sleep, where you train is usually the same place. For us, we're very lucky to have our own esports training facility. We have, it's not a house. It's in a building where our players have a lot of space, and they have their own training rooms. Usually they would train 5 days a week. That's around minimum of 6 to 8 hours, depending on what the coaches would actually have them do at that day. So a lot of that, and very consistent, planning and strategizing. It's not just them pressing buttons all day and just playing. It's not like that. Most of the time, some days they would spend strategizing and reviewing all of the matches. You'd be surprised how organized these teams are, especially when you see them playing video games. It's not like the olden days when we just press buttons and see who wins, right? This time, these are very calculated moves. These are strategies at the highest levels that can only be achieved with, organized practice. So that's what we do, at least for our teams. And I guess most of the teams right now that we compete against they understand that if they don't do that or if they don't organize, they would lose. They wouldn't win consistently. At least right now in esports, that's one of the things that we like, because organization is an indicator that the industry is growing and maturing, at least. So we're really happy that most of the teams that we compete with are like that right now. That's why everybody's succeeding.
Great.
Yeah.
Jab, I have another question when it comes to, because you mentioned that you have a stringent system, you're very organized, and I assume in the bootcamp, players would have like days off, right? For them to go out, and have fun. But because of the pandemic, because of the quarantine, I guess that was affected as well. So how were you able to manage the mental health and the player morale of your players?
Well, one of the things that we saw during the pandemic is that these guys because we have, let's say, our training facility is actually 2,000 square meters. It's two floors in a building. Yeah. If you guys have time, maybe I can give you a tour of our facility so that you can see.
Nice.
You could. Some of the content creators that we invited already have it on YouTube. Maybe you can just search Bren Esports headquarters. You'd see, all the players have all the space. That's why, at least for us, we barely had any trouble managing, let's say, the players feeling like they are, restricted, stuff like that. Because aside from the training facility, we have separate dormitories, like let's say 2 blocks away from the esports training facility, because we wanted to separate, the personal lives of the players versus them working. Because one of the biggest challenge conceptualizing our training facility is that we really wanted to find a way to separate work and life balance for the players, because this is definitely working. This is work for them, and it's a real challenge to separate their mindset in terms of, let's say, am I working or playing? Because they're already playing. It's really, really difficult to separate. So the way that we did it is that we have 2 floors. That's 1,000 square meters per floor. One floor is our recreational area. So basically, that's where you do everything. You lounge around, you play games. I don't know. We
R&R,
spend time
relax.
on there R&R. You watch Netflix. We have an area to do that. We have our own gym in the facility. So they have all that space. They have all that they can do. food, they don't have to do anything because food is actually provided to all our employees, except for Sundays, because we really want to encourage everybody to go out once in a while, or at least go home to their families, stuff like that.
Right.
So I don't know. We barely see any challenge in terms of, let's say, managing the players, because we see that they don't feel that they are actually restricted, or hindi nila feeling na nakakulong sila, because we have all that stuff that we can actually do in the facility.
Okay.
So I guess the only challenge was, some of them would like to go to the beach every now and then, but these are kids. They understand rules at a young age because of what we've been doing. So I guess they understand how to cope with it better than most children.
Right.
Some kids wouldn't understand, but these are young professionals already. So they know that these rules are followed. There are reasons for these rules. So at least for us, I think it's easier than most because of what we have in the facility, and the luxuries that the players have.
Right.
I think that's easier for us.
Yeah, I think your statement, Jab, parang nagbibigay siya ng perspective, right? It truly is. And thanks for sharing, because I'm one of those people who might think being in a professional esports team really is just you're just playing games, right? And probably may mga ganun talagang opinions. But the way you're saying it, there's the one thing that I was really impressed on was yung nabibigay yung conditioning, not just with the training that they're doing, but also yung parang way of thinking. You are professionals here. You are being paid, to be in this sport, and you are playing this. And that's really like, siguro yun yung parang biggest na takeaway ko, one of the key takeaways from that kind of development, especially with young people these days, right? Yung streaming culture natin na very, it's very loose, siguro unregulated, parang wild west. You can do anything you want, pero esports probably brings you to a different level there. That's very
in fairness naman, let's say sa streaming, it's more of the entertainment side of, let's say, the gaming industry.
Cool. Yeah.
Pero I can definitely say that these streamers that are actually getting paid, they also have streaming contracts kasi. These are very smart professionals that understand that there's a value exchange in terms of, let's say, what their responsibilities are, and then what the streaming company's responsibilities to them are, because just to give you an idea, sometimes these have, let's say, qualifications. They have to stream for 6 hours a week.
Wow.
I mean, you guys are podcasters. Imagine doing this every day for at least 6 hours a day on a daily basis. That's a lot of work, man. So I think in terms of, let's say, that, I think content-wise, yes, it's the wild west, because people are, finding ways to attract more audiences to their streams. But in terms of, let's say, what kind of work they're getting into, or their discipline, just to make sure that, they follow all of the streaming contracts that they have, or responsibilities. I think these guys are very, very smart in terms of that. And it's a lot of hard work to consistently do for them to be successful.
Absolutely. Agree with you on that one. At least for the ones I've also been following, I suppose there's already a lot of hard work that goes into that one. So Jab, we were, I was contemplating on this a while ago when you mentioned, the training facility. You guys have obviously the biggest one right now in the country. Pero how did your small operation, right, when you guys started, how did you transform that, right? Ano yung journey niyo going into one of the biggest esports teams in the Philippines? What was like the key thing that you needed to do in order for this to happen?
Yeah. So basically going into, let's say, esports when the industry was really, small and just starting out. One of the biggest frustrations, or at least opportunities, that we see when we were growing as a company, is that nobody is actually professionalizing athletes. Nobody is actually taking their time to educate the pro players, or at least the pro players that at that time,
right,
about what their responsibilities were. Nobody was taking the time to at least educate them in terms of, let's say, this is a career, this is something that you can do until you grow old, or at least this is an industry that has the potential to support you. So one of the things that we did when we were transitioning is that we wanted to make sure that we had the basic foundations of, let's say, a professional team. So we viewed all of the current trends for major sports titles and all that stuff, and we took the bits that could fit into esports. And then we saw a really big opportunity. One of the goals of the company is to actually provide the support and structure for our esports athletes. So imagine when we were creating our teams, people that said they were pros basically didn't even understand what a contract is. Nobody understood their responsibilities. It's just kids playing games. That's it. They were getting paid, but they didn't understand the value exchange. So we addressed all of that. We made sure our players understood what their contracts were. We understood that this is a career for them and this is something that they should take care of. This is not something that they do as a hobby, because a lot of these pro players right now, they earn more because of the money that's getting into esports, all these prize pools, all of the value in this. A lot of these young guys are now breadwinners for their families. I think our responsibility with that is just making sure that they understand what they're getting into, what their responsibilities is, the value exchange, and making sure that they have the professional mindset to support that in the long run. So for us, it started that way, and then because we wanted to provide the structure and the support for the players, it really made sense, just to convince my investors, let's put up a facility where our players and even the people trying to get into esports would understand that this is a professional industry. You tell me right now that you're mind blown just because of the way I say what we have in the facility, but it's when you enter, that's the first thing. That's the goal for us, is actually the first impression for people that have no idea what esports is. So usually what we, as a growing industry, you want other brands and other industry to enter, because we strive on sponsorships and endorsements. Imagine when I'm convincing a brand, a really big brand, to sponsor my esports team. Imagine inviting them to a gaming house, and then they see a house. So how can I convince that big time person to invest in my company and sponsor my team when they see a house? Right? So that's one of the things I did to convince my investors. We really have to do this if you're really serious with growing the industry, because there's a lot of opportunities for us. So right now, when I invite big brands, they have really, really small expectations, because that's what they've been used to.
Kala nila parang wala lang.
Yeah, I mean, some guys would actually go to the facility, in just casual clothes, thinking that he was visiting a house. So when they enter, they immediately get mind blown, and they get surprised of the scale of what we do as an esports company. So I'm really happy about that. That's one of the things that we wanted to do. But for the most part, the most important thing for us is that when our athletes actually enter our facility, they feel like they are professionals, because they are, right? So that's one of the biggest goals for us, because if the athletes themselves do not understand that they are professionals, they will not act like professionals. So I'm at least proud to say that at least if compared to other esports companies right now, or at least in the past, our athletes have a real good sense that they are professionals, and they understand that the industry can actually support their careers, or it's an actual career for them until they grow old, stuff like that.
That's amazing. You mentioned, Jab, na mind blown ako. Actually, hindi. Pero siguro for our listeners, probably yes, they would have their minds blown in terms of the siguro yung operations nyo, right? How big your operations are. Pero kasi sa akin, I've heard of Bren Esports even if I was not into gaming or competitive gaming. I know what the brand is. I know what you guys do. And that's why it's no surprise to me personally, kasi the results are there. Kumbaga, yung championships that you guys won, yung lahat ng na-attract yung mga sponsorships and whatever, it translates Kaya, I wouldn't be surprised na ganun kalaki yung facility nyo. Tapos, there's big operation, tapos ganun lang yung bahay lang yung pinapakita nyo to your investors. So, but for sure, it was really it's a significant achievement. I would say you guys are pioneers in terms of what you guys are doing for the country in terms of esports. Because, I mean, you guys are the biggest brand right now. And, speaking of that, right, can I just siguro pick on this a little bit, Jab? Yung kino-convince mo yung investors mo to really build that facility, what did you really tell them to convince them? Hindi, kailangan natin to. I mean, kasi you said you wanted to be serious.
Yeah.
How did that conversation go?
I remember it was, just me explaining to them that this industry that they're invested in will not grow if we don't, put in the path for it. I remember explaining that the players are not supposed to be this way. I know you're used to seeing them this way, but they are not supposed to be this way. Any big sports brand does not do it this way. If I remember explaining, you see the NBA, they did not start this way.
Yep.
They started and then they created, big facilities for each of the teams and all that stuff. If that's the path that you want to go, we have to start doing this right now. Or else somebody will do it before us. Somebody else will do it definitely. It's only a matter of time before, big investors come in and realize, okay, they're on the right path. We have to do something like them. And then, it's going to be too late for our brand,
Yeah.
Because if you see all of the big sports, the conventional sports right now, football, each team has their own stadium, right?
Yes, sir. Yep.
NBA, each team has their own training court or whatever, home court, all of that. So it's only, common sense for all of us. If you want to be a really big sports brand, you have to do something like this.
Yep.
That's how I remember it, and when I did that, I'm really lucky that at least my investors understood and they saw the potential and they know that it's the right way to do things, at least for our industry. So yeah, basically that's it. That's how it goes. It went.
Awesome, amazing. Okay.
Yeah.
But I had to add a lot of data and all of that. I mean,
of course.
when that's the big part of the stuff I had to discuss. But then again, this is backed up by a lot of data and a lot of projections and all that stuff. But basically that's the message that I wanted to give them.
Yep.
Jab, I have another question for you. So you mentioned something about the players. You want to professionalize the industry. You want to give that environment. That's why you really insisted on having that facility for your team, for your brand. Now, tell us more about the selection process. How do you identify, talent? Do you scout for them? What are the telltale signs that, this guy or this kid could play professionally with your team? Do you have favorites, mga paborito? Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah. I'm really sorry, but some people just get tired of me mentioning NBA every time they have questions about esports because that's how Philippines is. We love basketball and that's the easiest that we can relate to. So much like basketball, so much like professional sports, the players that we hire or at least the scouting that we do is backed up by resumes. Imagine being a 14-year-old understand what a resume is.
Yeah.
Right? So, at least in that sense, we're very proud that the industry is moving forward because, we always get asked, how does one become an esports pro athlete? Sometimes the most, difficult situation I'm in is that when, a family member of my boss or an investor tells me, oh, my kid plays this game. Can he join your team as a professional? I would tell him, sometimes risky. I would tell them, no, sir, your son cannot join. Because playing and competing is very different, right? So it's very, very different. They don't press buttons just because the buttons are there. So, scouting is backed up by a lot of data. right now, I'm very proud to say that I have an entire coaching staff, analysts that does that for us. So one of the things that is unique to esports is that everything that they do has data behind it. Because these
Yeah.
are video games has profile
Mm,
pages,
Correct.
inside of the game.
right.
The tournaments right now, at least the high level ones,
Mm-hmm.
have stat sheets for all of the players that have joined their tournaments.
Mm-hmm.
So we use all of that data to see which ones are going to fit our team. So, say, like conventional sports, the five, like let's say Mobile Legends, each of the five players has a role to play.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yep.
basically, we have all of these stats. How many, like let's say if you're a tank,
Mm-hmm.
how many damage have you soaked average per game? How
Mm-hmm.
many tournaments have you won?
Right.
Which tournament are these? Kasi minsan sasabihin sa akin, oy pare, nanalo yung anak ko dun sa pa-tournament ni Kagawad. Parang ganun, baka naman itong anak ko, pwede mo na isali dyan. Parang,
Mm.
sige, pasa mo na lang, tignan na lang namin, mga ganun. Siyempre parang,
Mm.
and then when you look at their, user ID and their Mobile Legends profile page, you see that these kids barely play any games or have, a lot of that. So at least, very, very, nagiging very scientific na rin yung approach when it comes to
Right.
hiring pro esports athlete. So
Mhm.
it's getting to a point that it's heavy data, which
Mhm.
is backed up by tournaments because there are a lot of big tournaments where we scout talent. Sometimes we even scout talents. Scout in a way that you see winners in a tournament.
Mhm.
There are unknown names right there, right?
Mm,
But the thing is, we can easily find data that is available because of the games themselves.
Mhm.
So, yung mga coaches namin, yung mga scouts namin, they easily see kung ano yung stats ng mga players na yan.
Mhm.
And then, that's basically how we do it. Pero
Right.
if you're somebody that wants to get into it, I would usually suggest join as much tournaments as you can, win as much tournaments as you can because joining is only the first part of it.
Mhm.
Winning consistently would get your name out there. Minsan nga, nagiging, na to eh. If you approach us, that's basically minus points for you.
Mhm. Mhm.
Because, yan eh, you don't have to do that if you're really at the highest levels. My scouts will approach you,
mhm.
definitely, because
Makes
the stats
sense.
are available. Parang ganun eh. So parang rin, di ba, let's say sa football sa US, di ba, yung parang compete ka sa college league, mga ganun, and then at the end of that, pag gagraduate ka na, yung mga coaches na ilalapit sa'yo, di ba, parang na yan eh. Paunahan na sila eh, umaabot na sa ganung point eh.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
a lot of that. So, it's very, very scientific at this point.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. So kung nag-identify kayo ng players, it's really based on their parang track record so far.
Yes.
Iniisip ko kasi parang meron din bang parang like in basketball may scrimmage ba nangyayari or may parang tryouts kumbaga.
Yeah. Tryouts usually happen. So, right now, kakatapos lang ng MPL,
Mhm.
after the tournament, we usually have, let's say, off-season ngayon eh. So during the off-season, our coaches hold tryouts. Tryouts are basically for nobodies. Kasi marami naman tao dyan that may be skillful but have not joined tournaments, mga ganyan.
Mhm.
So sometimes there's a really, really, really rare chance that
Right.
the tryouts would produce a pro player from out of nowhere. Parang
Mhm.
ganun eh. Nangyayari yun. There are tryouts. Kunyari, parang katulad ngayon, pare, grabe to eh. Kasi, so nag-post kami, we have online applications for tryouts. So lalagyan mo dun yung profile mo, mga ganyan, kung ano achievements mo and all that stuff. So, kunyari, pinost namin right now. Within 15 minutes, there's already 20,000 applications. Ganun
Wow.
kagrabe yan.
Wow,
So,
dami ah.
as in, grabe. I mean, last na tinanong ko yata, nasa 60K na yata, parang ganun. So, I mean, there's a really, really crazy amount of talent that
So,
wants to
hindi-
get into this.
Mm, right.
So, syempre, kaya medyo napuwersa rin kami to make it scientific because how do you
sobrang dami nga
identify
naman.
who's worth it
Yeah.
in a sea of everybody wanting to
Yeah.
get in? And syempre, yung mga coaches ko and our managers have their own targets kasi you just can't pick, alam mo yun, parang hindi na uso dito pare yung yung kakilala.
Oh,
Hindi na talaga
oh,
eh.
yan.
Because if you do, pare, matatalo kayo, magagalit sa yung team mo. Kasi we're at the point na, the pro athletes are smart enough that they're already picking teams that would give them wins. They don't necessarily want to be with a team just because they want to be with a team. Tapos na sila doon. They want to be with a team that has a proven track record to give you championships. Because at the end of the day, that's what pads your resume. Diba?
Yeah.
So,
Correct.
I mean, diba, parang imagine mo kung ikaw yung pinakamaraming accolades, or at least, which is, by the way, one of our players, na kompleto yung tawag sa kanya, he's the GOAT of Mobile Legends. Because all of the major events, even the SEA Games, he already has a gold medal for.
Wow.
That's very rare in Mobile Legends.
Yep.
So, I mean, may mga ganun kami, and we've been with this guy ever since season 1. It's already season 8, going into season 8. So we've been with him, we've been developing, just creating champions, and I think at the end of the day, that's what the players want.
Correct.
I mean, chismis lang pero minsan nangyayari dito, yung mga players na sikat dun sa ibang teams, they want to be with our team because they na I'm not going anywhere with this team. They're not gonna give me championship. Even if they give the biggest salary in the world, they're not gonna give me a championship. At this point in my life, that's what I need. Because, alam niyo naman, there's a really finite time or limited time for you to be a pro esports athlete. Because at the end of the day, your skills will wane, hindi na ganun kaganda yung reflexes mo,
right?
Diba? And you have to make decisions quickly to, just to get whatever you want as a legacy. Hindi ka naman pwedeng, parang basketball din yan. Hindi naman pwedeng lagi ka na lang sa grand finals pero hindi ka na nanalo. Wala ka pa rin sing-sing hanggang ngayon, di ba? So, all of that, I mean, nakakagulat kasi imagine mo, itong mga tao na to, pare, mga 14, 15, 16, mga ganun. Kasi ganun yung iniisip nila. And I'm really happy because of that. Because these guys at a very young age are getting really, really mature and they're getting really, really educated in terms of, let's say, being professionals.
Correct. Yeah. For sure.
Yeah. Jab, interesting insight, no? I have a follow-up question regarding, kasi you mentioned, diba, there are players who want to transfer to your team because of your experience and what you provide, no, as a professional team. I've recently heard of some rumors, like for example, okay lang ba wag-mention ako ng names ng players? But there's this one,
go ahead.
si Rene J. Daw of NXP is being bought out or nabili na ata ng another team or something. What's your thoughts about this? Is this a practice that is, common in esports, and do you agree with this kind of practice?
Let's see. Kasi kasi season 8 na ngayon . So if you look at all of the teams, or at least the brands in the major teams in Mobile Legends, at least the esports teams, all of us get our revenues from the eyeballs that are participating in our teams. All of that, right? So, ngayon, during off-season, the biggest draw for eyeballs and engagement for all of our fans is the rumors of Rebooster. Andun na siya . As in, magugulat ka . Dati kasi walang pakialam yung mga tao .
Right.
Kunwari, season. Matapos yung tournament, antayin na lang nila yung next. Walang in-between . There's no hype, no nothing. Wala . So, much like, again, NBA, during off-season, it's getting to a point na, saan lilipat si ganito? Saan lilipat si ganyan? Uy, ang pangit ng pagkatalo niya nung
may
team
free
na to.
agency.
Yes, yung star player nila, malamang bad trip yun. So, malamang lilipat yan. May mga ganyan yan. And doon na yan . So, parang may off-season hype na rin. Even the transfer of the players. Rene J is one of the, let's say, biggest names in terms of, let's say, Mobile Legends because ang laki ng fan base niya. Pero the thing is, people are speculating that he will transfer because it's been, 3 seasons na nasa NXP siya that he hasn't even gone to the grand finals. So, I mean, kaya, maraming speculations ng mga tao because of that. And, nandun na kami sa may point na some people are making money off of this as content creators na. It's not just the pro players. So, parang kunyari, let's say, sa NBA, again, sila Charles Barkley, they have their own show, mga ganun. So, meron na rin ganun sa esports. As in, siya.
Grabe,
Nakakatawa. Okay. Pero, my advice to you, syempre as a professionals then, expect this every time it's off-season na. Because the teams have grown to understand na, ano yan eh. Kami kasi, syempre, praktisado na kami dyan ever since season 1. There's no, ano yan eh, we don't take off-season as off-season. We have to keep going. We have to keep the momentum going about our players, our team, our brand. Syempre, gumagawa kami ng content in between. Eventually, na-realize ng mga tao, ng mga brands na, uy, biggest draw yung re-roster. Let's create content during off-season para buhay yung team natin. So, ngayon, everybody's talking about transferring mga ganun because it draws attention.
Right.
Pero, even us, we cannot confirm anything until the rosters are locked. So, sa MPL kasi, or at least sa Mobile Legends, let's say 1 week or a month before the actual tournament proper, there's an event called roster lock. Hindi naman siya actual event, pero parang nagiging ganun siya. So, us as a professional team, we have to submit the players' names. That's
Parang
the roster
final
lock.
roster.
Lock na yun. I mean, yes, yan na yun. So, before that day, there's going to be a lot of rumors. People are going to jump from one team or another. Wala lang, enjoy nyo na lang yung ride na pare. Until dumating yung roster lock day, hindi yan totoo lahat. Maniwala kayo sa...
So parang yung roster lock day, para siyang trade deadline sa NBA.
Yes, exactly. Yun na siya. So, syempre, I mean, you'd see big names just being thrown around na parang ini-insinuate ng team na yun na lilipat sa kanila because it draws attention. Di ba? Siyempre, sino pang gagamitin mo? The biggest ones. Di ba? So, parang kunyari, ginamit ko yung pangalan nila, uy, maglalabas ako ng, kunyari lang usually uso ngayon yung silhouette eh. Kunyari lang, maglalabas ako silhouette ni Lebron, tapos poster, kunyari, ng team namin. Guess who's coming to Bren Esports? Mga ganon. Pero super obvious na silhouette ni Lebron. Siyempre, ganun din ginagawa nila. So, parang yung mga fans ngayon, usually mga bata. Pare, si Lebron lilipat na rito. Siyempre, wala naman kami sinasabing ganun. Kayo lang naman speculate no. Bala kayo sa buhay niyo. Basta kami, enjoy lang. Pero pagdating ng roster lock, ay, wala naman palang lipatan, mga ganun-ganun. Wala lang. I mean, just wait for the roster lock. Announcement will be confirmed by that time. Pero, people are just enjoying all of that. Siyempre, ang dami na rin. Parang nauso na rin yung mga analysts dito sa ano.
Oo nga,
parang, I mean, people are creating content and making money out of content just discussing the possibilities and analyzations and conspiracy theories kung saan mapupunta kung sino.
Okay.
I mean, it's all fun and games as in it's all entertainment. I mean, sobrang nakakatuwa siya in at least in my perspective. So, as long as nobody's getting hurt or anything like that, all of these are speculations. Antay na lang roster lock.
So, talagang okay. Talagang nagdedepende sa roster lock. So, anything that they say before that, kumbaga trade deadline, talagang walang basis yan. Wala, bahala kayo dyan. Parang ganun.
No, yeah. Wala.
Interesting. That's
or
interesting.
At least, or at least if you see an actual announcement from a team. Kasi minsan nangyayari din yun. Kunyari, yung official announcement, Bren J goes to whatever team. Kunyari, Bren J goes to Bren Esports. Pag nag-announce talaga kami na definite, specific information, most likely totoo yun. Kasi syempre ayaw naman namin mabitray yung fans namin eh. Pero kung kunyari nag-i-insinuate lang kami, di ba? Kunyari minsan may mga gumagawa pa dyan. R, asterisk, to Bren Esports. Kaya parang gano'n lang eh. Di ba? Lilipat na ba si R, tapos blanco to Bren Esports? Wala lang, to generate entertainment. Mga gano'n lang naman lahat yan. Pero nobody's going to tell you confirmatory information up until the roster lock. Ganun lang yan. So medyo iba na talaga ngayon. As in, nagkatasan na every bit of opportunity to entertain the fans.
Correct.
I mean, that's really good in my perspective at least.
Okay. Jab, going back lang siguro to your teams again, right? So with your current the teams that you have right now rather, meron kang so Bren Esports has Mobile Legends teams, CS:GO, Dota 2, Tekken, Rules of Survival, Hearthstone. Can you tell me about your all-female Bren Victress team? I mean, how did that start? What was your intention behind that?
Okay. So basically, ang dami kasi naming teams ngayon eh. Pero these are teams that are going in and out because of the activities. So kami kasi parang, ano yan eh, we gauge team activities. Team activities meaning if they have tournaments to actually compete in. Right. Ganun, di ba? So Bren Victors is one of the teams that are inactive right now because there's really no
Right. Okay.
opportunity for us. Pero what we wanted to do with that team is that we wanted to form an all-female team.
Mhm.
Kasi one of the glass ceilings that we wanted to break, at least in
There you go.
esports, yeah, is the participation of the female genre, di ba?
Mhm. Mhm.
Kasi, pero ano yan it's very, very challenging.
Mhm.
One of the things na nakita namin is, or there's a really big opportunity to do that. Pero it's very, very difficult because one, it's very difficult to be a female gamer. As in, sobrang
Right.
daming, sobrang daming challenges. Not
Mhm.
just in terms of, let's say, how, bad people interact with you online, or at least sometimes you're berated because of your performance, not because you're a girl, or, I mean, for us, it's the performance it's not because you're a girl. The performance is because of your performance. Parang
Right.
gano'n lang sa amin
Mhm.
Di ba? Parang ano eh. Pero sometimes when yung mga taong na nanonood, they attribute the skills because you're a female. That's a big no for us. We don't
Right.
believe in that because
Mhm.
we show that there's a lot of opportunity being a female. It's just that the support is not there and it's not really consistent.
Mhm.
So, yung gusto sana na yung mangyari, and I'm sure we will do this again when we have the opportunity, or at least when the pandemic is over, we will continue to do that. Kasi
Right.
I feel that, an industry should succeed, will succeed if more participation or inclusion of
Yep.
whatever gender, however, di ba?
Right.
Parang more of that will, entail success for us. So
Mhm.
at least yun yung gusto namin marating.
Right.
And I feel we have more opportunities to do that in the future.
Very good. So one of the things kasi then with our podcast is we value the diversity regardless if it's in sports, if it's in gaming, the recognition, the people that we talk to. It's good that it's you guys are very cognizant of that kind of approach when it comes to handling these types of teams, especially if being a female gaming team. I agree. There's a lot of like challenges behind that, but hopefully you guys are like coming up with things on how to address that.
I have another question regarding. I know you've probably heard of this, no, Jab, regarding the BS esports, Bachelor's in Science in Esports, being
Yeah.
offered now by LPU. So, do you think those who want to venture into the pro scene in esports would have to, go through this course first? Or pwedeng, kasi nga, di ba, you mentioned as early as 14 years old, 15 years old, magiging pro players na.
Mhm.
So, what's your thoughts on this? Is it a prerequisite moving forward? Or kahit hindi naman?
So one of the things I have to, I see with the course that's being offered by Lyceum, it's not really geared towards, let's say, being a pro player. It's geared towards more of the back end.
Management,
So
yeah.
again, yeah. So in terms of, let's say, the NBA, I'm really sorry I have to keep on
It's
mentioning
okay.
basketball. So it's nobody will offer a pro or course in college to be a professional basketball player. Nobody will do that
Mhm.
because it's more of a skills-based approach, right? It's either you're born tall, you cannot study being tall, and then be a really good basketball player. You can't really do that. It's more of a skills-based thing.
Mhm.
So you don't really need not as much formal training, or nobody is actually going to get into formal training to do that. Pero in terms of, let's say, the back end, which is I think is the goal of the course itself, to support
Mhm.
the industry in the long term, I think there's a lot of potential to it. Pero
Okay.
right now, like somebody that's hiring esports professionals. So
Mhm.
there's a difference, diba? Parang professional esports athlete versus esports professional.
Correct.
Esports
Yep.
professionals are the ones impacted, namely me, di ba? Parang ganun.
Mhm.
Right.
So there's a lot of potential to it, pero I think there's a lot of missing opportunities on what they actually should teach, or at least there's they should, or at least we should be really, really careful in doing that, or baka it's something that we should learn while they're doing it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So ako kasi right now, it's not really a prerequisite because if I do that, I probably wouldn't hire anybody.
Yeah.
Pero in the future, maybe when they, they do their first batch of it, they'd probably learn a lot of things. And I'd probably also learn a lot of things based on their graduates and all of that stuff, or how the graduates perceive the course would be, or their feedback of it. I think I'd really learn a lot from that. Pero right now, the only thing I can say, it has a lot of potential. Pero it's potential that has to be taken care of properly.
Right.
Kasi I hear some of my colleagues in the industry saying it's better as an elective, be a business major and then just get esports 101 or something like that. So you get a better understanding, pero not a full-blown course.
Right.
I think that's also a viable opportunity. Pero nobody can definitely say what's gonna happen until the first batch comes out, diba, at least.
Right.
So the first semester, just to, it's not going to be me saying or my colleagues in the industry saying what if it's successful or not. It's going to be the students that are going to do that. It's not going to be us. Diba?
Okay.
Because at the end of the day, they're the ones that are investing in the course. Sila yung go-convince ni LPU na, okay, take this course because this is going to give you this and this and this and these opportunities when you graduate and all that stuff. So it's a transaction based on the choice of the student. So I'm waiting for them to give me feedback after they finish their first semester or something like that. Diba?
Yeah.
So sila yung makapagsabi sa atin. Pero I feel na there's potential to it.
Yeah.
Pero Jab, if Lyceum decides to call you and invite you to become one of their lecturers, papayag ka ba?
Yeah, sure. Why not? I mean, it's an opportunity for me to see what it's all about and, at least steer it in the direction I think that would help it a lot. So why not? Diba?
Yeah, they should be doing that because, diba? You're one of the biggest.
I think
you're the biggest.
Well, I think even if we're the biggest, one of the things that some of my colleagues in the industry are saying is that teachers have to be taught also. It's not because they're the best in whatever they do. There's a science to actually becoming a teacher. There's even a license, diba? So I think that's also one of the concerns. Where are we going to get these professionals that will teach? Kasi the available teachers probably don't understand what esports is.
Yeah.
They're good, but they don't know about esports. So there's going to be people like me who understand esports, but I'm not a licensed teacher. So, there's a lot of things that should be addressed before we make it successfully. Parang ganun. Pero again, if they invite me, I would gladly help as much as I can.
Right. Okay.
Okay. Jab, another question. Carlo mentioned this earlier, diba? You have, I don't know if your CSGO team is still active as of now, but how do you see, the future of CSGO in the Philippines? Kasi, diba, Valorant is becoming more and more popular. Even yung Call of Duty for mobile and sa PC is also very popular. So, ano future ng CSGO? Kasi ito talaga yung, diba, for first-person shooting, ito talaga yung sumikat sa atin.
Right.
Diba? Na nauna eh. So, how is it gonna go from here?
Okay. Right off the bat, I have to say na our CSGO team is inactive. And the players are already competing in Valorant.
Okay.
Tumulo na. Okay.
So basically, in terms of, let's say, your question about CSGO. So for us, in choosing what teams to build, we're also scientific in that way. So there's a lot of criteria for us to decide before we actually create a team. So one of the things that we look at is the growth projection of an esports title or a game that's trying to be an esports title.
Right.
So when we create a team out of that, and then for a time we have to keep on reviewing if it's a team that is worth to keep on supporting. Diba? So CSGO is one of the games that we feel that is lacking in terms of, let's say, growth in the growth. So yung projection hindi masyado maganda. What's the indicator for that? The biggest indicator, para at least alam nyo din, if you don't see new teams or new persons entering the professional scene, it's probably a dying game. So ganun siya.
Okay.
Diba? So let's say, for example, CSGO, it's going to be the same thing over and over again, competing with each other. It's the same professionals that are growing old inside of the game.
Yeah.
Definitely, it's something that's, having trouble keeping up with the other games. Kasi diba, parang kunwari, katulad lang ito. imagine mo na lang, again, basketball. Imagine mo na lang kung hanggang ngayon naglalaro pa si Larry Bird kasi walang pampalit kay Larry Bird. Walang naglalaro.
Yeah.
Diba? Ibig sabihin, yung mga bata na lumalaki ngayon, they'd rather play something else. They don't care about basketball. So in terms of, let's say, CSGO, katulad yan, a lot of esports titles are popping up. Nobody is, I mean, if you ask me, I have a lot of friends playing CSGO casually.
Yeah.
But I don't see anybody or the kids telling me that they want to be a CSGO professional. That's a really bad indicator for a game. Kasi if none of the kids want to get into your game fresh from somewhere else,
right?
You're not growing your community. Kasi di ba, if nobody's playing it, nobody will understand it.
Correct.
Yeah.
Nobody will compete. Hence, nobody will watch your events.
Is that in the Philippines right now, Jab? Or like globally. Malaki pa rin ba yung name ng CSGO?
Well, CSGO is big in Europe because that's where most of the successful professionals are.
Right.
So let's say for example, yan yung medyo maganda rin sa esports eh. More like let's say katulad din ng conventional sports. So tayo, tuwan-tuwa tayo sa basketball. Soccer or football is basically dead here. Pero it's the most popular game globally, di ba? It's the most popular game, football. Di ba? Pero tayo, hindi tayo naglalaro ng football. Sikat yung basketball dito sa atin.
Unfortunately, big football fan ako.
Yeah. So it's rare to have you like that, di ba? Kasi may makilala rin ako eh. Pero it's very different per region. So there's always going to be a game that's popular here, which is popular somewhere else. So let's say, have you heard of a game that's called Free Fire?
No.
So Free Fire is like, Free Fire is like PUBG. So right now, in terms of, let's say, esports tournament viewership, natalo niya yung League of Legends.
Talaga?
So, imagine mo yun, mas sikat siya sa League of Legends, pero hindi natin alam kung ano yun.
Okay, exactly.
So ako alam ko, basically, because it's my job. Pero kung hindi ako nagtatrabaho sa esports, I would definitely not know that game. Pag nakita ko siya, baka sabihin ko, oy, PUBG, baka gumanon pa ako eh. Pero it's like PUBG, parang ganon. Pero it's one of the popular games right now. So maraming ganon.
Right.
So, syempre minsan, targeted din yan towards yung region na gusto mong i-capture. So maraming ganon sa esports.
Right.
Okay. And Bren right now, Jab is the biggest not just in the Philippines but in Asia, right? Is that like a correct statement to say? And,
definitely. In terms of number of players, number of teams that we support or games, of course we're the biggest. Pero syempre, iba rin kasi minsan yung, at least, I mean, the brand scale itself is sometimes different. Kasi biggest kami in terms of the number of teams that we support. We have our own facility and all of that stuff. And sometimes, let's say, EVOS. They have a really big team right now. They're big in terms of, let's say, external investments. So, may mga ganun din in terms of, let's say, may mga iba-ibang definition depending on what you're trying to go for.
Right.
Parang ganun. So, marami siyang ganung classification.
Yeah. So, you mentioned about that specific team that is rivaling you in terms of like external, siguro yung business side of things. Pero, who is Bren's, let's talk about rivalries here. Sino yung pinakamalaking rival right now ng Bren Esports?
Okay. Rival in terms of, let's say, games that we play in, or more of the games. Okay,
The
kasi
games,
pag size nung, let's say, company and medyo malayo talaga yung gap eh. Okay. So for the games, I would say sa MPL, all of the teams that are there. So there's 8 teams inside the MPL that are competing with us.
Okay.
So I would say that they are our biggest rivals. So medyo marami yun eh. In MPL. For all of the other games, there's basically little to no competition.
Wow.
Because syempre the goal din for us is to, I mean, pre-pandemic, we would usually fly our esports athletes all over the world.
Right.
Just to compete in tournaments. So ganun yung ginagawa namin. So it's not really just to compete in the Philippines, but to compete globally for us. So, when we started, we had a team stay in Taiwan for an entire year.
Right.
Because we are competing in the Clash Royale League. So, medyo maraming ganun eh. Meron din kami team na nagstay sa may Japan, Korea, all of that stuff yung ginagawa namin when we were starting. So, yun, pre-pandemic yun. So, hopefully, when all of this is over, we can do that again. Kasi, yun naman yung target namin. We want to be known globally.
Yeah.
Correct.
So,
Yeah.
yun.
Yeah, and we're very proud, right? Na yung Bren Esports is really Philippine-based, managed by Filipinos, and it's already making a name. I think we've covered this in our previous podcasts. Then Jab, about Filipinos being talented in the yung basta larangan ng sports. We're very talented there, and then we have esports, right? SEA Games, stuff like that, international competitions.
Yes.
We're making names for that, so obviously we're very proud. So I think it's time to do our match point. Jab, let's just go with I have an interesting siguro take for you for this. Kasi Lyceum, like what we mentioned before, had some foresight, right? To have esports or to look at esports as not just a growing industry right now. It is still growing, I would say. Pero it's an industry that will be, let's say, next 5-10 years, it's still going to be there. Pero to your view, what is the future of esports, specifically for our country?
Well, if we follow the data right now, it's going to be the biggest entertainment sports genre.
Mhm.
At least, in the next 2 to 3 years, it's going to be the biggest in terms of, let's say, viewership and engagement. Because the difference with esports, at least, in my view, or at least the data, is that one of the biggest factors is, let's say, for example, for conventional sports. For you to get into a conventional sport, to be a fan of a conventional sport, the first thing you need to do is to actually play that game.
Mhm.
Diba? Imagine if you want to play, let's say, soccer.
Right.
So, how can a skinny kid play with the big, tall, brawny kids, right? So, in that sense, he's not gonna compete. He's not gonna enjoy the game, all of that stuff. Compare, let's say, they play, football as an online game.
Mhm.
All that physical stuff is immediately no bearing, right?
Right.
The only thing that they need to do is to have, all of their fingers to press the buttons and all of that stuff. So, in that sense, esports has a really big advantage, diba? So, I can play whatever esports title I want without even thinking if my physical abilities are fit for that specific genre.
Mm.
That I have to decide on if I enjoy playing it. Diba?
Mhm.
So, let's say basketball. You're never going to enjoy basketball or unless if you really like it. If you're not as tall as anybody else, you're not gonna compete at the highest levels. If you're not physically fit, kung mabilis kang hingalin sa pagtakbo, you're not gonna enjoy basketball.
Yeah.
Therefore, there's a big chance that you will not be a fan of basketball. Diba? Or unless your entire family already watches it and all that stuff. Pero, if it's new to you and nobody has played it around you, or your friends are not playing, your chances are you're not gonna be a really big fan of it, diba? So I think in terms of that, there's a really, really good projection of esports because the numbers are continually growing. At least unique din si esports because right now, all the numbers are compounded together in terms of, let's say, esports. So let's say, for example, basketball is very specific, swimming is very specific. So those sports have their own numbers. Therefore, they have their own projections in terms of, let's say, growth, or if they have the audience to support whatever they want to do in the long term. Diba? Esports is like sports. When I say sports, meaning you have all these different games and all these different numbers compounded into esports. So, kunyari, naglalaro ka ng Mobile Legends, naglalaro ako ng, I don't know, Tetris, yung mga ganyan, Street Fighter, Tekken, and all that stuff. All of those numbers are going to contribute to the big number of esports.
Right.
And then, because of that big number, the support will pour in because of that. And it will continue to pour in, di ba? So, yun yung medyo major difference and at least yung outlook ko for esports. It will continue to grow because of that.
Okay.
Yun lang.
Okay.
Jab, I have a follow-up question with regards to that.
Okay, nakamute ka.
Sorry. Yeah, I have a follow-up question with what you said. The growth prospects is very bright for esports in the Philippines, as you mentioned. Do you still feel the same? Kasi, diba, when we had the pandemic, people were forced to stay at home, and as you mentioned, diba, Maybe some of us resorted to playing games, online games, to cope with the stress, diba?
Yes.
And you really can't play contact sports, so what else can you do, diba? Aside from watching Netflix, you can play games. Do you still see this trend going forward? I mean, the growth going forward, if we have, more people that's vaccinated, when contact sports are allowed already, will you see the growth trajectory to be as fast as it is right now, moving forward?
I think it will become more stable. I mean, of course, when people are starting to go out, of course, yung mga tao talaga na that are not really into it, will
Right.
start, just doing whatever they did pre-pandemic for sure. Pero the difference right now is that when people are, using games as a way to connect to the outside world, definitely that connection will persist even outside of the pandemic, even outside of the
Mhm.
quarantines.
Right.
One of the biggest things that you get out of playing, let's say, a title, let's say like Mobile Legends,
Mhm.
this is a team game. If you start getting into it seriously, you would probably start playing with the same people over and over again. And then you start having conversations. And then you start scheduling, I don't know, matches together, even if you haven't seen each other physically. Because,
Mm-mm.
pare, kailangan ko na mas magaling na tank. Ito lang laging kalaro ko magaling. Kausapin ko na to para hindi ako matalo my next game. You will create that connection. Ang tagal na natin nasa pandemic, second year na, magsa-second year na tayo.
Yeah.
So, whatever connection that we've created because of all of this, that would probably persist even if the quarantines are over. Diba?
Yeah.
Mhm.
So, I mean, you're already hooked in it. You're probably not gonna go away. You would probably enjoy the games.
Right.
So, compared sa physical sports, nawalan sila ng audience, tayo nadagdagan. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
there's a really big difference because of that. Diba?
Okay. Yeah.
Great insight.
That's a good point. And thank you for sharing your thoughts on that. Go ahead, RK. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank
Yeah.
you.
I just agree, and I just wanted to know more about
Oh, okay.
Jab's insight about it. Pero I definitely agree because yun nga, like what we mentioned in our chapter alone in JCI Manila, sobrang addict namin sa ML. And right now, the reason why I asked you about CSGO is because we have this CSGO tournament ongoing already in our chapter. No, kaya tinatanong kita, may growth ba
that's
yan?
good.
Diba? Pero I'm pretty sure we'll probably branch out to the other esports like maybe Valorant in the future. Kasi nga,
Yeah.
CSGO is dying. Pero for our generation kasi, di ba? We're in our 30s.
CSGO.
Diba? CSGO talaga eh.
Lumaki siya sa
Yes,
Counter-Strike eh. Yeah. Totoo yan.
Well, actually, sa totoo lang, Dota 2 and CSGO, their strategy right now is to hold on to their audience.
Yeah.
So, tayo na ng mga naglaro ng CSGO, they're trying to make it more nostalgic for us.
Mhm.
Or yan yung mga tao na nag-invest ng malaki sa CSGO. Yung mga tao na bumili ng million worth of skins.
Yeah,
Hindi na nila
yeah.
bibitawan yung game na yan. Diyan na sila.
Right.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So, and I mean, yun na yung target nila. Pero, I mean, it's really bad for the game kasi, sad na we don't see new faces. We don't see new players. And I think that's just it. Ganun naman yata talaga lahat ng sports, di ba? Eventually, people will move on.
Yeah.
Especially sa esports, people are creating new games on a daily basis. They're
Correct.
trying to get all of our attention. Or even the younger kids, di ba? Parang ganun. The main purpose of creating a game is for somebody to play it. Sobrang daming apps na nagko-compete and games na nagko-compete. It's getting really, really scientific. They're getting to all of the psychology, all of the mentality just to have you play their game and then keep on playing it. Sobrang dami
Right.
ng ganun ngayon.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nagiging siguro saturated na din with the number of games being produced. Siguro the only
Yes.
question or parang decision behind this or like what you said, Jab, na nagtitrend in terms of data. Kung ano lang talaga yung what's popular right now, what's fun, what becomes competitive in the future, and that's where I guess yung magiging investment then in terms of what an esport team would look like. And speaking of esports teams, Bren Esports, what does your future look like? Let's say in the next 3 to 5 years, what are your plans?
Well, one of the things that we wanted to do, or at least the goal of the company is to continue providing, the support and structure that the esports athletes here need for the industry to grow. So, syempre, the natural next step for us is at least in the next 3 to 5 years is to establish a team outside of the Philippines. So, yun yung mga next steps namin.
Nice.
And we're really studying it because, the brand, kami kasi we're very careful about our brand. We're really, we really love our brand and we want to make sure that everything we do represents our brand properly. So, yun na yung mga moves namin. And at least yung growth prospects namin, the next natural step for us is to actually branch out to other countries. So we can provide the same support that we give out to our country and give it to another country that probably needs it or has talents. Kasi tayo, ang nakita kasi namin talaga, we have really good talent here. The problem is, go outside, ganun katulad din naman conventional sports eh. We have really good talents here. They go outside because they get better support outside. So kami, syempre, why would we not focus on that opportunity? Why not provide all that support for our esports athletes here so that they stay here and represent the Philippines?
Right.
So far, we are succeeding. And syempre, yun nga, the next growth is probably, we're picking out a country that would best suit our, plans so that we can, provide the same support and structure that we've been doing here so that we can, succeed in other regions. So that's our plan.
Got it. Okay. Well, thanks for sharing that. And overall, that's our match point. Jab, thank you so much for sharing your insight. And the last, the few summaries that we have discussed for the past hour. And yeah, we'd like to end with that. That's the buzzer for another episode. We'd like to thank everybody who has been listening. And we especially want to thank Jab Escutin, CEO of Bren Esports. Jab, thank you so much for your time tonight. We enjoyed talking to you, giving your insights on the insider information, I would say, of what goes on with the esports team. So, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. Thank you. I really enjoyed the day.
Yeah, we're glad that you enjoyed. So visit us on gamehigh.ph to get the latest content and follow us on Facebook and Instagram at thegamehigh.ph. Get yourself updated with what's fun.
Of course, if you have any suggestions, Viant reactions, or basically your thoughts on our current episode, we would love to hear from you. Hit us up in the comment section or message us through our Facebook or Instagram pages.
Thanks for listening, everybody. This is Carlo.
And this is RK. Cheers. We'll see you then.
Ciao.